Now the moment we've all been waiting for.
I am Nate Riggle, and you are listening to The Way of the Bonfire. All right, party people. It's me, Mike Nate, and I'm back from the dead on the podcast where we focus on ways to bring the world together in the most meaningful and lasting ways possible so that good, hardworking people can stop waiting to make the most of their lives. And isn't that what you really want? I mean, if you really ask yourself that question, life's good, it's comfortable, you can't complain. But just because you can't complain doesn't mean you're making the most of it. And in my experience, can't complain is something to be grateful for. It's a good attitude, but it's not enough. It's not what you were meant for. It's not what is going to sustain your life force and keep you doing as much as you possibly can, growing your business and having a true impact on the world and people and really having connection and growth and enjoyment that lasts and that's meaningful in your life. So today I want to talk about preparation and the difference between preparation and being ready, because those are different things. I'm about to go camping with some buddies of mine in the next state over, and we're going to go fishing and all this stuff. And so, yeah, I need to think about how, if I have the right food and gas and tent and fishing supplies and the right stuff for the body of water that I'm going to be on for this time of year and the conditions and the water level. And I want to make sure that I don't get bitten up by bugs. And I want to make sure that I have a good time there and that I have a place to sit and that we can have a fire and that all those kinds of things I need to be thinking about. And we're thinking about that together. And so that's preparation. But I hope that some things that happen there are completely unpredictable, that we have some challenges that come up. I'm not hoping for my boat to pop or sink or anything like that. I'm not hoping to get attacked by a bear and not have my bear spray. I'm not hoping for any of that stuff, but I am hoping for some funny things to happen that are maybe not ideal. I'm hoping for just a great time and lots of jokes and things to be said that I didn't expect, because that's what makes things funny. But often we expect things to go exactly as planned. We try so hard in preparation to envision how things will be and what they can be and what they must be based off of our preparation so that we are ready for them and we notice them when they come. But there's this element of thinking that you're ready and thinking that you're fully prepared and that everything will go exactly as you planned if you do it perfectly, that unless it's life or death is actually counterproductive. There's this feeling or sort of quote out there about preparation that's been really helpful in life for a lot of people. If you are prepared, you shall not fear. By failing to prepare, you prepare to fail. But I say be prepared to fear, but to have courage anyway. That's next level. I say be prepared to fail, but grow anyway. Because if you're not fearing, it means you're not challenging yourself. I did an episode before called Navigating the Irony of Fear. And it was about these people that don't want to go to this island because they find there's cannibals on it. And they end up avoiding this island, but then they get stuck at sea for so long that they end up becoming cannibals themselves. They created the thing that they feared the most by not having courage anyway. I don't think that you can completely avoid fear, and I don't think that you can completely avoid failure. I don't think you should try to fail, like people say, but I think you should put yourself in situations that inherently have failure in them and still try not to fail, but you're going to fail. You have to be able to stare in the face of disaster and tragedy and disappointment and accept it so it does not break you. Because thinking that you can predict everything and expect everything to go exactly as planned will actually make those things that don't go as planned more painful because you planned it nice. And I've been so guilty of using preparation as an excuse to not act or to avoid fear or the possibility of failure because I've seen how so many times how thinking that it's going to go one way and it goes another, and that way is painful and often more painful than I expected. And it was sort of devastating because it blindsided me. So I believe that hoping for the best and preparing for the worst is not quite spot on either. I believe a better way to think about that is expect things to go differently than planned. Allow in your mind, this is a key element of preparation that we leave out. We try to dial everything in. We look at every different scenario, or we're blissful and we think things will just work out. I've done this before. Everything's kind of stayed the same way for so long. Nothing's going to change when I go and do this again, or I do this other way, or I move to this next level in my life. And then when it does, it's like we just kind of feel we either freeze or we panic. And it's okay to feel fear and to feel disappointment and failure and grief. But I think that we can make those things less painful and we can handle them easier if we allow them as a possibility. Like we should be surprised when things go exactly as planned. And this doesn't mean that we shouldn't visualize and imagine how things will be when we get to a certain point. It's a very powerful exercise. But the reason that I have been guilty of using preparation to avoid or delay things that I'm secretly afraid of, or I'm kind of hiding in my own heart or hiding from the people around me, is because I wanted to believe that the little boy inside of me who thinks that life is safe and predictable or that it can be, I wanted to believe like he did that you have to wait until you're not afraid to do the thing you're afraid of. But it doesn't work like that. Who thought that you can avoid all bad things if you're just extra careful or obedient? And I'm using this kind of kindergarten example that I'm about to share with you because that's how we tend to think about everything still. And I've had a couple of breakthroughs along the way. I do tend to go back to it when I get confident of thinking, I got this. I know what to expect. And I think that the ultimate way to know what to expect is to expect the unexpected, as they say. We sometimes think this next level is going to be different, but I'm doing good at this one. So I'm ready to have this next one go smoothly. I've done all the prep work that's recommended for this. It's going to go smoothly because I'm prepared. Then we realize the hard way that preparation does not mean we are perfectly ready. The only way to truly be ready for the next level is by understanding that your skills and strength have got you here, but they will not be enough in the next level. If you can admit that to yourself, and that means that things are going to get messy and uncomfortable in ways that no one can fully predict. And if you think you can predict them, it's going to be more painful than it needs to be. When things get hard, you have to be happy that you knew that would happen. I hope I'm making sense. Or you will be unhappy and lack peace most days of your life. More days than you will be happy. And it doesn't have to be that way for you to grow. You can grow and enjoy it, even with all the pain and craziness and unexpected things that happen. You can be happy and sad at the same time without being confused and lost and depressed. And on this constant roller coaster of whiplash of, okay, get to the point where you have to go out of your comfort zone. And then you go out of your comfort zone thinking you're going to be okay. And then you get blindsided. Like I thought elementary school would be like kindergarten, and I was blindsided. Actually, let me share that story with you. Um, I didn't know, like, as a little kid, I could still remember this. As a little kid, I spent most of my time just following blindly, like, before I got into elementary school. I didn't know how anticipation could help or hurt me. Like, I wasn't thinking, "What if?" I wasn't thinking, "What if things go amazing?" or "What if things go badly?" I just knew what I liked and didn't like, and I got excited about things, but I did not know dread and worry and despair and disappointment and discouragement and betrayal and the feeling of just trying to survive. I thought life was just a fun game where everyone would accept me or show me that what to do or protect me from harm. Like, that's kind of how it's supposed to be, I think, for kids. It isn't for every kid, but I was really lucky and blessed to have a wonderful mom and dad who did that for me to a certain point, but also knew when it was time for me to start spread my wings and jumping out of the nest. And I loved kindergarten because all the kids in it with me were kids that were meeting each other for the first time. So we all started, I think, on the same playing field of just blissful acceptance, right? I'm alone in this. I have to be friends with these new people that I don't know. And so kindergarten felt a lot more like preschool back then, or at least it did to me. That's probably why they wanted to hold me back. I perceived it more as a daycare where you just play all day, although you can learn your numbers and letters and learn to tie your shoes if you want. I didn't want to, so they didn't feel like I was progressing, and I wasn't. But when they said they held me back, my dad knew that I had to jump, even if I was gonna struggle more than my peers, and even if he knew that nobody's perfectly ready. And I know you think this is a funny example, but it just to illustrate how far back we learned this. And so in first grade, I went to a different school, expecting just to have it be more like kindergarten. So same faces, or that everyone was new like me, or was the same kids, right? So my mom packed a lunch in my little brown bag and dropped me off at school and made sure I could find my classroom. And I didn't know anyone in my class, but everyone else that came from mostly the kindergarten at that school did know each other. They all were so excited to see each other, and the teacher did her best to make me feel seen and protected and all that. But then lunchtime came, where things aren't quite as structured. And every single kid that had gone to that kindergarten at that school had known where the cafeteria was and where the first graders went the year before them to eat lunch because they saw them doing it. Our teacher dismissed us to lunch, and all the first graders from my room and the other two ran and got in line at the cafeteria for school lunch with their lunch tickets. I did not have a lunch ticket. I had a brown paper bag. And I know this sounds like the wussiest sob story, but it, I'm telling you, when you're a little kid, stuff means something to you. Um, so I had my little brown paper bag. All the other kids were in line. I stood there looking at the empty tables, wondering if I should still wait in line. I was even trying to wait in the line just to kind of feel like I belonged. And another teacher that was on lunch duty or something came up and said, "Oh, you packed your lunch. You can sit wherever you want." And I just look out at all these empty tables, and nobody had sat down yet. And I remember just picking a table and clutching my unopened lunch bag and seeing the kids in line talking and laughing with each other and telling stories from hanging out and stuff, and feeling like I was an outcast. And I know you're like, "Oh, boo-hoo," right? But I knew no one, and so that was one reason. And the second reason is because I was not in the line. And the third reason is kids coming out of the line all had the same lunch, which wasn't mine. They had trays, and I had a brown paper bag. And the only hope I had as they were coming out of that line with their lunches and laughing and comfortable and all that stuff was that someone would come and sit next to me and say hi and maybe even share their school lunch with me. That I was just used to all of that sort of thing in my life with my family. I grew up in a family of 6 kids, and just there's always somebody that knew me, right? And but everyone in the lunchroom filled up every single table in the gym, but mine and the other 10 empty tables on the other side of the cafeteria that never filled up at all. So I'm sitting over there by myself with my brown paper bag watching all the kids laugh, and play and have fun and eat their food. And it didn't fill up until we were called back to class. So I'm sitting there trying as hard as I could not to cry. And I never opened my bag. And that 30 minutes of lunch could have been a year as far as I'm concerned. So I felt like I didn't belong from day one. And that was all in my head. But the things that happen in your head can become what you are. You can create those things. So I begged my mom to give me money for a lunch ticket the next day, which she bought, and I decided that I was ready for lunch the next day, right? I did my preparation. And I was just thinking, you know what? Okay, I was imagining it. I was like, I can get in line and people would be forced to talk to me and accept me, and I'd have the same lunch as them. So I wouldn't feel so different and like I didn't belong. And I'd make sure that I didn't have to sit down first. And I was ready. And I even made a new acquaintance in class that was kind of talking to me. And we were kind of planning to sit next to each other at lunch. So I made all my preparations and we hurried to the line in the cafeteria together and were surprised to see that on the day of the week that we were in there, the older grades, they got to the lunchroom first. No big deal. They're just up in the front. The third and fourth graders were up at the front of the line getting their tickets and punched and going through the line with their trays first. And my new alliance or acquaintance saw his older brother up near the front of the line and ran up to say hi. And I'm like, he's laughing and hanging out with his brother and he's not coming back to the line with me. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just sit next to these people. Even though I kind of felt let down because I didn't think he would with me after that. But I had my ticket and I was hopeful. And then I saw something so exciting I could hardly contain myself. My older brother at the front of the line with a bunch of the other fourth graders, including this really intimidating one in a leather jacket and chains and his hair spiked. I think he even had earrings. It's like, why is this adult? A fourth grader? I don't know. Anyway, I ran up to my brother and said, hey, expecting to finally feel accepted and get even more cred with my fellow first graders that I was cool. And look at me, I know fourth graders. I'm legit. You guys are going to wish you sat with me yesterday, right? But what happened next was probably up there in the top 3 worst things that could happen. My older brother saw me and he was probably just teasing and kind of thought it was funny big brother, little brother stuff and didn't know what I went through the day before. And he knew I was resilient at home. So anyway, he sees me, he smiles and he says, hey, there's my brother. Get him. And then the kid in the leather jacket, as well as his posse, ran over and threw me on the ground and started beating up on me. Like, I mean, fourth graders, right? And a teacher came and stopped them before they could do any damage. But I got up and I caught my brother's eyes and I realized he was just joking around. But I walked to the back of the line, no longer able to hold back my tears. And the other first graders were asking if I was okay. I think they were just doing it to, I don't know, whatever. It's a long time ago. And what happened, like, they're like, what's going on? But I couldn't speak. And for that became kind of how I thought about myself. It's crazy. For first and second grade, I was never I never felt like I could go and be part of any group because I was just so devastated by having my expectations shattered like they were after all that preparation and expectation building in my mind. And I was afraid to play soccer or kickball at recess. I had been told they already had enough people every time I tried. Like I was embodying the weak and insecure kid that I didn't want to be seen as. And I know that they responded to that, right? So I never tried to use my brother's confidence and status again to find acceptance. Um, but I noticed one other kid that seemed to have no friends or courage to join in the games and sports of the other kids. And I made, I guess we'll call it friends with him because it seemed low risk. And there was another kid who he was in rags and obviously very poor and very low confidence, who also struggled to learn and complete his homework like I was. And so we formed this like triad, or there's 3 misfits who basically just tolerated each other. So we didn't have to be alone or to appear alone. And we had learned and internalized falsely that risks were not worth taking. I know it seems silly, but this is what happens throughout life, and we do it over and over again. And I've just learned that if you're gonna put yourself out there, you better be sure as you possibly can be that you know what to expect and can anticipate anything that can go wrong. But the problem with that little group was we constantly just lived in our own insecurity and fed each other's insecurity. And one of the kids used to play on my fears and insecurities, telling me because he knew them well because he had them. But he's always telling me how embarrassed I would be anytime I tried to get courage up to go do something or go ask to play soccer or whatever, or how much trouble I would get in if I tried to do anything that took even a smidgen of courage. And I wasn't good enough or cool enough to play soccer, or they've been playing all year, and how can you how can you expect to do well like that? So, but we were perceived as weak and uncool by every other kid on the playground. Maybe not every kid. Maybe that's just what was in our head, but that's kind of how it felt. But I had two brothers, and I was not weak in body. I just believed I was at school because it was reinforced by my own doubts and the doubts of my own quote unquote friends. And one day, a bully who was constantly reminding the school that he knew karate tried to beat me up. Came and started picking on me and pushing me around, punching me with his techniques. And I just grabbed him in an adrenaline fueled terror and threw him down and shoved his face into the grass and sat on his back with all my weight over my hands and arms, pushing down on the back of his head. And all I could think was, what have I done? I can't beat this kid. He did a demonstration of karate in class. And he broke a board with his bare hands. He's going to kill me. And I could tell he was getting more angry and more angry the more I held his head down, just out of sheer terror. And I was thinking, maybe I should let him up so he can forgive me and doesn't get any more angry. And I let his head up, and he started to scream and yell at me like, "You're dead meat," and "Get your hands off of me." So I jammed his face back down in the grass and thought, oh no, I am dead meat. I wish I would have not defended myself. And I'm holding his head down in the grass even harder this time. I thought, why did I just do it again? I'm such an idiot. Now he's going to be even more mad at me and beat me up worse. So I let his head up again, and he sounded like the spawn of Satan with murder in his heart, threatening me in ways I had never heard. So my body took over again and slammed his face back down. And I held it down for a while this time just to try to give myself a second to think. And I thought, yes, he will beat me up if I let him go, but right now somehow I have control by some fluke. And I let his head up and said nervously, "I'm sorry, if I let you go, will you please not beat me up?" And he stubbornly responded, "No way, you're going to pay for this." So I pushed his face back down. And then I thought some more, and I let him back up and said, "But I don't want you to beat me up, so I can't let you go." And he just screamed, "Let me go." So I pushed his face back down and thought again. And as I brought his head back up to offer another explanation that I didn't mean to do this to him, before I could say anything, he just burst into tears. Like, "Okay, okay, I won't hurt you. Please just stop picking on me." And all I could think was, me? Picking on you? You're the karate master. I just wanted to live. I could never pick on you if I wanted to. And I still did not believe him. So I let him up and I ran inside the school. But he just rolled over and cried and later told the teacher that I beat him up. And I was right not to trust him. And I didn't know what to expect. And luckily the teacher didn't believe him and did believe my story. It must have been, like, thinking back on him, it must have just been a common occurrence and somebody finally stood up to him or something. But he walked around the school telling all the other first graders that I just got lucky or something. And I believed him. It wasn't until later that I realized he never harassed or bullied me or even tried to talk to me again. I was too fixated on my own insecurity to perceive things like that. So I hope you don't think that this is just about kindergartners, and you realize that this is kind of how it goes in life. We think that we're ready for something and we get blindsided, and then we just hold on to some sense of false security or insecurity, and we just do it again, right? So I never got my confidence back. So then one day, like when a kid who I was afraid of as well, because he pretended to have a little gang in first grade on the recess yard, came up and started making fun of me with his posse. I tried to defend myself with a comeback. He must have called me a dork or something, and I said something back. And he ran up to me and knocked the wind out of me with a sucker punch to the stomach for talking back. This was before there was like a no tolerance of violence and bullying policy like there is today. So anyway, his entourage of wannabe gangsters, I think this one was in second grade, they start chirping like the kids from Christmas Story. I kid you not. He had these little toadies, right? And he told me that if I told on him, so I'm sitting here just trying to get my breath, and he's like, if you tell on me, my whole gang's gonna come make me pay for it. It's just so ridiculous. So my two cowardly friends decided not to get my back, but also reminded me how stupid I was for speaking up. And I'm like, I can't breathe. Like, okay. And I sort of believed them, like as the recess bell was ringing right after that. And we were all running up the line up next to each other in parallel lines to go back into the school as I was just getting my wind back. And the kid who punched me was in the line right next to me away from his posse and was spouting off about, that's what I get for messing with him and his crew. And this thing happens to me and I've been trying to remove this from my life. But the rage and the unfairness of it all just possessed my mind and body. And I punched him in the stomach as hard as a 7-year-old can punch another. And he hunched over and lost his wind and was groaning like you do. And when the teacher came over to ask why we were both holding our stomachs, he responded that we fell off the playground equipment. So I did the same. I learned the prison rules of snitches get stitches in second grade. And that kid never stopped using the power of the sucker punch to end fights before they started. And maybe those are stories for another day, but I never had to deal with it again because he knew I was punching back, whether he sucker punched me or not, whether he had that advantage. And the irony was that later he ended up becoming one of my go-to friends throughout middle school and high school. And we later even studied this dojo out in the sticks that was like a precursor to mixed martial arts and with a base in Shotokan karate. But we were at the same dojo together, and we'd spar in his driveway when we weren't at the gym. And the place didn't give away belts like the Kenpo and Taekwondo places on every other corner, giving black belts to kids. They were teaching us grappling and striking and submissions before it was a mainstream thing with the rise of the UFC in the 2000s. But more importantly, what they taught us was confidence in psychology and how to be ready not just for violence, but for anything. And one of the main lessons I learned about preparation from martial arts is that you are never 100% done getting ready. That preparation comes before, it happens during, and it happens after the threats and dangers and challenges and unexpected things in life. That unless it's life or death, or maybe like the Olympics, you should never let lack of preparation be what stops you from facing the unknown. Stop just getting ready to get ready. Focus on staying ready, but don't wait to be ready to do anything. Or either life will pass you by or it'll blindside you. And like I said before, it'll do more damage than it has to because it'll do damage psychologically to you because you didn't prepare your mind to deal with it. In my teenage years, I was used to scuffling around with my friends and my brothers and sparring at the gym. So when I got jumped by another, I don't know where these like gangsters keep coming from, but back then I guess everybody wanted to be seen as a gangster. So there's this wannabe Crips gang in the bathroom at school, and the other kid in there ran out like a coward while I was getting jumped, and and said he was sorry that happened to me. So I didn't. My martial arts did not prepare me to deal with 5 kids, but it did prepare my mind to take the beating like a champ because I learned to get my butt kicked and to do it really well, and I just moved on while everyone was gasping in the hallways when I walked out. It was a big deal for them, people that didn't even get beat up, but not for me. And that's the true value of preparation, not preventing anything bad from happening, but knowing how to respond when it does. I learned that it was the friends who stood up for me when they stood to lose something whether that was a real threat like physical violence or reputation or acceptance by the in crowd, that those were the real friends to keep around me. Those were the people that had real value. Connecting myself to popularity and all that other stuff, like I've had that on and off throughout my whole life, but I've never seen any sort of value out of that other than, proximity, um, but friendship and the people that are, the salt of the earth type of people that have prepared their response in advance on how they're the type of human they're going to be because they're already ready for anything mentally. Those are the ones you want to keep around you. And I realize that this never changes regardless of the arena. There will be fearful people who value reputation and security and winning over integrity and trust and self-respect and friendship because it feels safe or advantageous. But I'm telling you, you don't want things to be safe. You don't want to think about things as being predictable. Not 100%. There will always be a temptation to wait until you're ready. But that is the only guaranteed way to lose, as slowly and as quietly as possible. So, yeah, if you're going to do like Alex Honnold in that movie Free Solo and climb El Capitan, you need to prepare perfectly. You can't leave anything to chance. If you watch that movie, you'll see he had everything figured out. Like if you're going to scuba dive in a cave, you need to plan and prepare for any and everything that could go wrong and leave nothing to chance or ignorance. Or if you want to, like the Olympics just ended, if you want to win the gold in the Olympics or win the Super Bowl, you need to know that you prepared as perfectly as you could, or you will have regret. But almost everything else, you just need to prepare enough because being ready is a mindset that can push you forward or hold you back. You need to expect mistakes and surprises and imperfection and rejection and embarrassment as companions to your confidence. Like they live together. They're not things that are eating or killing your confidence. They have to coexist. I'm not a martial arts master or black belt, but the ones who are, and I've met a lot of them, and I've trained with a lot of them, they'll tell you that they've gotten to that level not by having everything figured out, but by getting their butt kicked over and over and over again. And they're not done getting their butt kicked. And they're never done. They just have learned to expect it and never think that they are ready for everything. They were not looking for certainty as much as they were for progress. They did not let the anticipation of certain pain and defeat and failure keep them from accepting the challenge day in and day out. They weren't waiting for some magical day when everything, they would just be done. They did the things they could not do so that they could learn to do them. Life's counterintuitive in that way. Preparation is about expecting the unexpected as much as it is about being ready for the expected. It's not about worrying and considering and insulating yourself fully against anything that could go wrong, but about being ready in your mind and body for the things that you can't possibly predict. And part of visualizing success is not just seeing things going exactly as you want them to, but also seeing yourself in the future stay calm when you did not anticipate things. It's about leaving the door open for things to go better than you can visualize them and allowing yourself to be pleasantly surprised. It's about seeing yourself to be being proud of yourself for taking action when there were lots of unknowns, instead of settling for regret on what might have been because you wanted certainty. There's this other school of thought that you can just plod along and be bored and but resolute in the prescribed path with perfect clarity and security and back-to-back success. And that's your sacrifice. But that's not a real option because life is suffering and joy constantly. Life is certainty and uncertainty. And if you try to have one of those things without the other, you're not prepared and you will not be ready for either one. You won't be ready for suffering and you won't be ready for the joy and for the victories and the winning and the certainty. You have to be prepared to have both. So prepare to not know what will blindside you, and you won't waste time wondering why you didn't expect it. You will not be disappointed or discouraged. You'll just adapt with what you got and heal better. Because preparation is about awareness, but it's even more about building patience, resilience, resourcefulness, improvisation, acceptance, and creativity in the moment. So rejoice in the unknown and the known. Because growing up is learning that you need them both. Go get them. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast today. I hope it had impact and meaning, but I really would like it if you work more on becoming that bonfire in your life for yourself and for other people, and start really going after that growth and that change that you've been waiting for. I promise I can help you get started on that at changewithnate.com, or you can go to the business website and we'll teach you how to grow in ways that really compound. That's at wayfirelabs.com. Either way, I hope to hear from you soon. Get on the calendar and we'll see you on the next one.